Hi there. Welcome to the Bloom Show, brought to you by New Bloom Solutions and above all flowers. My name is Sahib Naeem, your host. The purpose of the show is to help the flower industry innovate, connect, and bloom through information, through community, through collaboration, and building network. The most important thing is that this is a way of giving education and looking at things from a different perspective in order to make good decisions. We believe that with information and education, the flower industry could make better decisions, and that's awesome. So today is a special episode, and it's called Optimizing for the Current Reality and trying to predict the future, but it says predicting the future. And I added on of cold chain logistics. Today, we are having a different platform. We are doing a panel, which we have 4 industry experts from different sectors and different specialties. And Megan Conyers will be hosting and moderating it. So you don't have to hear so much from me today, but you'll be hearing from Megan Conyers. As I always encourage, please ask questions. This is for the community. Feel free to engage. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to even encourage everybody and say hello today. It really makes it a lot more fun and interactive, and our guests get to become a part of it, and you get to become a part of it too. So thank you again, firstly, to everybody. I do want to say a funny story, and I do want to give credit where it's due to Mr. David Armellini. We first started this about 2 years ago in WFSA. He joined me with a logistics roundtable where we brought in Prime and Armellini, and it was such a great success where it was good information coming from a unified voice, which is very important for us to share a unified voice. And we decided for a casual conversation to do it again today. So thank you for that support and for kind of giving that spark of doing it again and for being here along for the ride. I'm going to give a brief introduction of everybody, and I'm going to start with Christine Boldt. I believe she's a silent hero to the flower industry and what she does with AFIF. So Christine Boldt is the Executive Vice President at AFIF, American Flower Connection, and has been exposed to the flower industry for more than 30 years, as her mother was one of the first women to own a flower importing company in Miami. Her mother was one of the first founding members of AFIF and sat on the board of directors for 24 years. Joined AFIF full-time, and she had joined AFIF full-time in 2004 as an executive vice president. What does AFIF do? Since 1982, the Association of Floral Importers of Florida, AFIF, has dedicated itself to advocating, networking, and enhancing specific programs that benefits its members. AFIF is constantly advocating on behalf of its members on national public policies, issues, and international trade matters to ensure the free flow of imported floral products to the United States. I encourage you to reach out to her and find out more because they truly help the flow of flowers happen within the industry. Now I'm going to put on my reading glasses, makes this a little easier. Now we also have Mr. David Armellini, the president of Armellini Logistics since 1984. And he has a very comprehensive understanding of transportation industry. He has followed in his father's very large footsteps, always looking for new innovations to make Armellini Logistics more efficient while continuing the commitment to customers by providing service beyond expectation. Armellini Logistics is one of the largest family-owned companies specializing in temperature-controlled shipments and perishable products, expedited trucking, and LTL scheduled services across the United States with 75 years of experience to be exact. Simon Milne is the president and CEO of Solent Freight Strategies. Solent Freight Services Limited is the largest commercial air freight wholesaler in the United States, specializing in perishable goods. For more than 24 years, Solent has partnered with leading brands to meet market demands, providing air cargo and freight services efficiently and affordable around the world. Sharon Garcia is the Director of Logistics Operation Customer Brokerage at Crowley Logistics, a licensed custom broker and logistics professional with strong proficiency in the development and implementation, management of new and existing key global clients and processes. Crowley Logistics is a U.S.-owned and operated company serving customers in domestic, international, government markets through logistics supply chain and energy services with more than $2.5 billion in annual revenues and over 160 vessels and approximately 6,300 employees around the world. Then we have Megan Conyers, which is our moderator. I might have not said the story earlier, but I actually met her in a classroom. She was one of my instructors for design thinking, which is a great concept. So she thinks of things really differently, and that's why I asked her to come on today. Megan Conyers is an international business growth and strategy executive focused on growing the opportunities for organizations in logistics and supply chain through strategic advisory and education. Megan is a co-founder of Key Swift Strategies, an international trade and strategy consulting facilitating a broad range of solutions to organizations around the world. Key Shift focuses on helping clients leverage their existing resources, fine-tune processes, and optimize strategies to reach their full potential. I thought it was just important to give a background. Sorry it took so long, but I did think it was important to give a background. Now I will bring on Megan Conyers. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Saeed, how are you?
How are you? Very well. Thank you again for joining. Can you let our guests a little snippet of what they're going to experience today?
Sure. So the conversation today, you all work in the flower industry and you understand the ins and outs of your particular aspect of the business. And there are so many different pieces of the supply chain. And when we look at perishables, particularly flowers, there's a lot that we've all learned together in the last couple of years. And depending on who you ask, the pandemic is over. And so what we want to talk about now and today is what we've learned and what are the challenges that we live with on a day-to-day basis now. And how can we move forward? Are there any existing or interesting solutions that we're seeing coming down the pipe? Are there things that we still need help on? And how can we all work together to collaborate to make sure that we have a more efficient supply chain with our work moving forward?
Fantastic. And again, feel free to ask questions. This is a great opportunity to ask questions. And I also encourage, the reason why our first episode was so successful was because companies started sharing this YouTube with their clients, with their customers through emails, newsletters, social media. So please feel free to copy this link. If you need a graphic from us, send it to your customers, because again, with the more information they have, the more education, the better decisions, and the more they work and collaborate with you. So now I'm going to bring on the guest, and thank you for that, Megan. I'm going to bring on the guest. Sorry. Hello there. Welcome.
Thanks to all of you for joining us today. I would love to be able to go around the room real quick. And I know Saeed gave your professional bios. But what I'd like to do is kind of hear from each of you, maybe one thing that bio doesn't reflect about what you do, or what's most important to you or you're most passionate about your job. And I would love to start with you, Christine. What is something that's not in your bio that people should know about you?
Hi, Megan. Hi, hello, everyone. I think one of the things that's not in my bio, which people that do know me understand, I love the flower industry. I love my job. I love the opportunity to represent the flower industry. So that, I think that's the one thing that doesn't come across in words. Awesome.
Passion is something that is, you perceive it. You don't necessarily do that. And you have been such a strong advocate for the industry over the last several years that it shows in everything that you do. So thank you for that. Sharon, what about you?
Well, interesting enough, I worked in perishables at the beginning of my career for 10 years, and then went to other companies that were not focused on perishables. And now the last 4 years I've been back in it, and it's exciting to see how it's changed, but also how it stayed the same. And I think there's a lot of potential for changes and growth, because you can't do things the way you did them 25 years ago. But I'm very passionate about getting new ways implemented.
Awesome. And I can advocate for that. Sharon has been she's one of the biggest advocates for the industry. And I love every time we get to connect and talk about certain things that are going on. Simon, what about you? What is not in your bio that people should know?
It's funny. There seems to be a common thread running through this. I think we all here seem to share a passion for what we do. As a founder of Solent with my wife and CFO, we share a passion for this industry. It's our firstborn child, and working with perishables actually teaches you very hard lessons in life. And I'm sure David will vouch for that. That once you do perishables, you can do any other industry very easily. It's a very simple business. Dry cargo, We've been able to move into other very specialized industries because of our experience in the flower industry. And it's the core that runs through the theme here is, and the core is the passion, I believe.
Awesome. David?
Well, passion seems to be the correct word, and that certainly fits me. I certainly have been in this long enough, literally grew up moving boxes and being told I'm not big enough to move the box yet. I was still too young when I wanted to start loading trucks. So we've been doing it all our lives. And our passion is just to serve the customer as best we can. And in today's changing times, that gets a little more difficult. So we've had to be more innovative. And that's one of the passions I like to do, is try and change things around to try and keep giving a good service, even though we have limited resources sometimes.
Excellent. I think, Simon, that's absolutely right. It's, if you can make it through a holiday rush in the flower industry and have everything be delivered on time, I feel like you can succeed anywhere. It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you can move into pharmaceuticals and to other very unique industries from the flower business. So it's a very unique education.
And David, I'm gonna come back to you on that maybe later if we have time. But that opportunity to be able to diversify from what you've learned here it gives you this interesting perspective on being able to be flexible and mount the challenges in front of you without having to fear them. Right? You guys are all consummate professionals, and I admire each one of you for everything that you bring to the industry. So if you guys are okay, are you okay with diving into the questions?
Sure.
Let's rock and roll, guys. So we want to talk about kind of what we're seeing right now, and the current state of cold freight, specifically flowers, moving through not only Florida. I'm based in Miami. I think a couple of you are as well. But what we're seeing with cold freight moving into the rest of the country, are we seeing it growing? Is it declining? Is it about the same as it was 3 years ago? How is that working? And Christine, we'll start with you.
So I think the pandemic provided us with a huge opportunity in the flower industry that we didn't see coming. Prior to the pandemic, the industry was, I don't want to say suffering, but we were questioning, like, how can we sell more? How can we increase demand? When the pandemic happened, I advocated for the industry to make sure that the flower industry in Miami never stopped. It never closed. So right away, we were able to continue supplying to anyone in the country that was open. Now, of course, there were challenges in getting stuff around the country, but we were there. We had the opportunity to stay open the entire time. That was not easy, but we did happen. We were able to get the ability to stay open. Now, through the pandemic, demand increased, which was not something the flower industry saw coming. Nor did we ever think that was something that was going to happen, but it did. It provided a huge opportunity for the flower industry to see what happens when demand increases. Consumers buy more flowers all the time, but it came with tons of challenges. To your point, Megan, now we are in a situation, and during the pandemic, we were in a situation where, labor was an issue, transportation was an issue. All of those things were an issue, but we had increased demand. So how could we work together with our partners to make sure we could maintain that? And a lot of the changes had to happen, whether it was moving stuff by sea, moving stuff more in different airlines that didn't necessarily happen before. And we didn't have passenger planes that we could use belly cargo. So we had a lot of challenges in trying to getting the products to Miami. And then, of course, as David will talk about, the challenges of getting it out of Miami were key. Some of the interesting statistics that I just want to, 90% of all the flowers that enter the United States that are sold throughout the United States come through Miami or South Florida. I should really say South Florida, but it comes through South Florida. And that creates a huge challenge in itself because so much volume is here. Not only is flowers, but fruits, vegetables, herbs, fish, all perishables to our point. So flowers is the number one import into Miami International Airport, and is becoming extremely important to Port Miami and Port Everglades too, because of all the challenges. So I will stop there and say, yes, we are facing challenges today that we didn't see coming. Now, what's going to move forward for us? We don't know, based on freight rates, fuel surcharges, and the actual demand from the consumer, because our consumers going to change their buying habits because of being able to have things more open to spend money elsewhere, or are they going to continue spending time at home and making sure their flowers are in their home on a daily basis?
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. It's the amount of perishable goods that come through the state of Florida is massive, but understanding that 9 out of 10 every cut flowers that enter the country come through South Florida is one of my favorite statistics, and it's mind-blowing the amount of volume that we deal with. David, what about you guys? So we have land, air, and sea here kind of represented on the call, but from a land perspective and overland moving of all of these flowers, how did you guys handle it? Are you seeing more now? Is it overall still high? What's happening?
Yeah, the volume certainly, as Christine said, the volume did jump up. We call it, the St. COVID, that created more flowers moving through our industry. And it made a challenge for us because, as you stated before, we have a driver issue. The trucking industry has a driver issue. And I tell people it's not just, drivers are hard enough to find. When you ask a driver to do what we've been doing and the flower industry's been doing for 70 years of driving across the country, making 15 stops on the way, and at 2 a.m. delivering boxes into somebody's cooler, turning off the alarm and putting the alarm back on, trying to find a driver to do that is almost impossible anymore. So that's become one of the challenges. And we've had to make changes in order to adapt with the increased volume. And what some of the things that all of us have done is, we've reduced some of the service that we provided to the customer. Instead of running up to the East Coast, up I-95 or 75 and running up there 6 or 7 days a week, we cut that back to some places 3, some places 4, some places still 5. But in order to decrease the number of stops on the truck, in order to make it more palatable for a driver to drive for us. So that's some of the changes that we've had to do, especially since we have a shortage of drivers. We had to use outside contractors more and more. And the outside contractor has, as someone has said before, the airlines have a lot of options. Well, trucking companies have a lot of options, and they don't want to take a load that has 7 stops on it. They're very picky in saying if it's not 3 or less, we ain't taking it. So we've had to consolidate our customers' volumes to make better or less stops on a truck to make it more appealing to have someone come from the outside to drive for us. So the increased volume has made us some changes in the way we do business to provide for our customers.
Excellent. That's even from an internal perspective. It's amazing at every little moving cog that you literally have to keep an eye on to make sure that your people are happy and that you can keep the people that you do get, and then that you can access people on demand as you need some of that extra capacity when you can't hire the full-time drivers, right?
Correct.
And then Simon, from an air freight perspective, you were bringing up some interesting points earlier, but with the lack of passenger cargo options over the last couple of years, we had to get really creative. And are you seeing some of those new routes or those new cargo options for air cargo? Are you seeing some of those stick now? Or do you expect it to kind of go back to a balanced load?
The market right now, it's kind of, we don't see a clear path ahead, just because the airlines are hoping that business travel comes back into play, which we're not seeing it. We're seeing now more of a leisure business travel combination. So we're seeing now a hope for the airlines that would like to see travel increase. It's increased dramatically domestically, but not internationally. So we're seeing now a crunch for capacity from freighter capacity due to the demand from Asia into the US and for the South American countries to receive their PPE. That's still actually going on, and testing kits, because we're expecting another round of demand at the end of the year for PPE. But that doesn't help us in the flower industry. And all we're seeing is less and less capacity, higher and higher prices. And as Stephen said, the airlines becoming much more picky now with where they will fly, where they want to fly, and who they want to fly, and how much they'll fly it for. And it's become kind of a minefield out there when you're looking for, as Stephen would apply the same probably terminology, when you're looking for domestic trucking as you're looking for international or even domestic flights. It's becoming a big issue. We're not seeing any clear path ahead at the moment.
Okay, and then so it's already becoming kind of it's almost like we're going back into the unknown as we move forward into what I hate to call a new normal, but that's our new reality. But then Sharon, a lot of people don't necessarily, especially from a consumer perspective, we don't necessarily think about some of the compliance pieces of moving flowers and other perishable goods. What have you seen in the last couple of years from your perspective with regards to compliance, having to clear entries and volumes and lack of regulatory agencies being in the office, right? Our timelines have all changed. What kind of things have you seen that you expect to kind of stay for at least the time being?
Well, in air, I will tell you, I just had a meeting with an employee who does the inspections for us, and it's still the same old story with the CBP agriculture. 1 minute they're doing overtime, the next minute they're cutting it back, and it's constantly back and forth, and that's the way it was 25 years ago. You never knew if you were going to have enough inspectors or enough, inspections coming down, there. But they have been very good through the whole pandemic, NC and air, in maintaining people in the office to do the inspections. So, but it's always a challenge when you have fruits, vegetables, flowers. I see CBP agriculture is always a challenge to get it done, to get the work done.
When we talk about our timeline, when flowers are entering the country, because most of the cut flowers that we see are imported, as Christine can vouch for. But then when we see all of these things having to come in and clear customs, are all of the flowers having to undergo inspection before they get to go on their way?
I believe so, unless the rules change. But I always found that flowers, when they were at one specific type of flower, especially you're getting roses, you're getting carnations, it's much easier than when you get these mixed bouquets from, that's direct consumer.
Right, because they have to. Go ahead,
I'm sorry to jump in. Can Christine answer that question a little bit as well? Yep. Can you chime in there, please, Christine?
Sure, absolutely. So air was always our main opportunity for flowers up until a few years ago when Hurricane Irma, and that's a whole nother story. But so air, at Miami International Airport, we have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, Customs and Border Protection inspections for perishables. That doesn't exist anywhere else. So that's a huge advantage, and it goes back to the work that has been done in Miami in the perishable industry, especially in flowers, to make sure that our commodities can move. So the Customs and Border Protection inspectors that inspect, they can inspect 24/7, and they have employees all the time. So from the air perspective, they spread, it sounds like there's a lot of employees, but when you spread it 24/7, it becomes less. So there is an opportunity, to Sharon's point, there is an opportunity at any time for anyone, any of the airlines, to pay for flowers or any perishables to be inspected on overtime if there isn't enough staff there. And that's all. That could be a whole separate discussion. But I want people to understand that there is the opportunity to pay for overtime at any time if there isn't enough staff. But there are programs that were put in place in the flower industry to back up what Sharon said too, that there are products that what we call on the line release or the cut flower release program that don't get inspected every single flight, every single day. So roses is one of them. And that's an example of something that only gets inspected randomly 3 times a month. So that provides an opportunity that if a flight during a holiday time is coming in and that entire flight is roses, and roses is not the flower of the day, that flight can move on without any inspection. Now, the difference between air and sea, this is really important. Air, when a broker or an airline presents the product, it's product by product, farm by farm. And if a pest is found in one product, that product from that farm has to be held in order for it to be determined by USDA what that identification is and whether it needs treatment. Now, in sea, it's very different. So to Sharon's point, if a container has multiple products on it, CBP cannot determine where that pest was found, or since it was in a whole container, the entire container has to be fumigated. We don't have the same opportunity by sea. So there's more risk in a sea container because of the pest identifications. And because it takes a long time to inspect a sea container versus an air shipment, it creates holdups. And again, we could have a whole discussion about that. But I just wanted to back up. Yes. So there are opportunities, and AFIF is working on trying to mirror what happens at the airport in the sea circumstance. But when you work with the government, nothing can happen overnight. We have to make sure we're working forward to that. And during the last two holidays, Valentine's and Mother's Day, actually CBP did a pilot with USDA's approval. So we had the best opportunity for flowers to move through the seaport because they did a pilot that was mirroring what happens at the airport to show that we can make that difference.
That's incredible. There are so many different moving pieces that I am always fascinated to learn from you all. I want to talk.
Can I just add to that as well? But
sure, Simon, of course.
During COVID was big delays of inspections because there were not enough inspectors, even though they're there 24/7 because of COVID, and because due to one of the explanations to us were that they missed one class of graduates from the class, the TSA class and the agriculture class because of COVID. So we missed a whole class of people, graduates, and that then put pressure on the staffing. So even though there are available staffing, it is not always practical if there's not enough staff to do the inspections.
Correct.
Perfect. Yep. So then that's been one of the challenges that we've seen. So with the compliance side and some of the inspections that we're not only are we learning as industry, but also regulatory agencies are learning to better service us as we go. But can we talk about some of the other challenges that we've seen? So let's start with sourcing. I know, Christine, you work with a lot of importers. Sharon, you work with importers. David, I'm pretty sure you have great relationships. And I think all four of you have good relationships with flower importers and sourcing. Have some of the flower farms been affected, and have importers started to diversify their sources, or are they still using the same farms that they've always used? Anybody can take the mic on that one.
I guess I'll start. During the pandemic, the flower industry mainly in South America, South Central and the rest of the world, but majority of our product comes from South America, had the same issues that majority of the companies in the United States had, labor issues. COVID was a big deal in South America, social distancing, and getting people to be able to come to the farms to work was a huge situation. So during the pandemic, as we started to grow demand, it was an ever increasing issue of enough staff at their levels, not just on the farm, but also transporting and then the airports and everything. So it created a huge problem there. To your point of diversifying, I think because demand went so high, the importers, this is the benefit of importers. They're not just buying only from one farm, they're buying from sources all over the world. So, but again, worldwide, the pandemic created circumstances where we couldn't always get things from everywhere. Or to Simon's point, the cost of those products, during a time in the middle of the pandemic, we weren't bringing anything from Australia because there was no way, it was too expensive. So they had to figure out ways to bring more product from the farms that they currently were using with the restrictions of labor, but also providing opportunities for other farms to collaborate and consolidate.
Excellent.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Crowley has been promoting, when this whole pandemic thing came out, nearshoring, bringing, promoting more of bringing products that are closer to the US and not going to Asia, because a container from China right now costs $18,000 to bring, when a few years ago it was like 4 or 5. So if you bring it, not only, and especially in the flower industry, it's only a couple of days on a boat compared to 2 weeks coming from Asia. So we have been promoting that a lot these days.
And it's not as much of a political issue as some people might think. It's a logistical issue. It is extremely expensive to start getting things the further away they are, especially from China and Asia right now. I'm looking at the clock, and so I'm going to skip over a couple of questions. I know we talked about driver shortages earlier. We wanted to kind of touch on fuel prices a little bit, but I feel like that's also, Simon, if you want to briefly talk about some of the issues you've seen with fuel prices, and David, how is that affecting the way that we can move things around?
Well, we did some charters back in March, to give an example, and for 6 of the flights that we did, we had to charge for the last 3 flights just a fuel surcharge alone of $270,000, $90,000 per flight fuel surcharge. So that kind of puts a crimp on people's pocketbook, and I'm sure, David, I don't know what your fuel surcharge is right now, but you're probably about 60%, aren't you? 65% or something?
We're right now at 55% of our gross rate. So it's crazy.
So that gives you the economics. When people spend, things cost more money. And I always look at it as a cut flour index. If you've got disposable income, you buy bread, you buy milk, or you buy cut flours. And that's our industry down to a T. It's when the economy is good, people have cash in their pocket, they spend money on flours. And if they're living on credit, they don't. So if you're buying on credit, that doesn't always give you a good indicator of the economy. But fuel prices are definitely affecting what we see in as far as the people's appetites to charter aircraft these days.
Absolutely.
And from the trucking side, it's crazy because not only, as I said, our fuel surcharge is up to 55%, I think it is this week, but on top of that, the fuel reserves are at a 30-year low. So we've actually had issues where we go into a truck stop and they're out of fuel. So we have to go to the next truck stop. So now we're having to make sure we're planning ahead for our trucks to make sure as they're running that the stations have fuel for us.
Wow.
It hasn't gotten crazy yet, but it's already started. The Northeast is having trouble. So that's just another challenge to try and get over, of making sure, it's one thing to pay the $5.50 a gallon for diesel. The other thing is to make sure they have it.
That's a big one.
$5.99 it was, but a month ago in New York. I think it's above that now, isn't it? It's probably
the national average is $5.50, but it depends on what part of California. It's over $6 for diesel. It's crazy.
Wow. So we have several challenges in front of us. We have a lot of things that we have to work through, and things that we often can't control, right? Such as fuel prices and the state of whether or not people want to work. But are there solutions or other tools that we have around us that we've seen that we think will help us kind of reach some of these? Is legislation the answer? Is it more diversification or more consolidation? How can we start to better streamline and still promote the usage and sale of cut flowers?
I'm a big believer in if legislation, it's a a double-edged sword, right? So the more legislation, the more complicated things get. The less legislation, there's the people can interpret the legislation in their own ways. So, as I said, if there's too much legislation, it can work against you. But at the same time, if it benefits you, the pure legislation that you have, obviously, then it's going to work. So it depends on who's looking at the legislation as well. So, you have to be careful when you want to start legislating too much, in my opinion. So,
I tend to agree with you, David.
from our standpoint, the biggest challenge we have is we're trying to move more into loading our trucks on pallets to try and make it easier for us to load it, for easier to unload it, and easier for our customer to help us unload it with a dock and those things. And it's a broken record, but one of the challenges we've always pushed, because everybody wants us to modernize and to mechanize what we have. It's very difficult to mechanize when you have thousands of different box sizes. So I find it really funny that when it comes to a sea container, everything has to be a certain size box or you can't ship it, to fit on that pallet, to fit it just right, because they're maximizing that capacity on that container. So they make sure the boxes fit the pallet perfectly so they can maximize the capacity. But for other than the sea container, Christine can speak to, there's millions of box sizes that we get. So it makes it, you'd have to have such a crazy machine to be able to handle all these different box sizes. And we've seen over time, it only get worse because everybody at least in the wholesale retail trade, they want smaller and smaller and smaller boxes. So now instead of loading the truck with, 600-700 boxes, we're loading a truck with 1,800 boxes on a truck.
Wow.
So it's just more pieces. So it's harder to mechanize. We'd love to be able to get there, but that's a big challenge for our industry with so many varieties. You speak about asparagus. Well, asparagus is all in the same size box. Peaches are always in the same size box. Apples are always sold in the same size box. But when it comes to flowers, because there's so many varieties, it's just a proliferation of different box sizes. So to try and mechanize that, it's a challenge, but it's something we'd love to be able to do.
And may I ask a question real quick, David? This is kind of a wishful thought. Have you ever thought of any solutions for that? Like, what would be your magic wand solution?
Well, the problem is, whatever our rate is, let's say our rate is $10 a box to ship this box. Well, the air freight is typically at least triple that. So if I'm 10, they could be $30, $50 a box. So the grower is going to maximize that box size to gain the best rate he can on the airline, because that's where his cost is. His cost is shipping it from farm to Miami, whether that's the importer paying it or the grower paying it. So they're going to maximize that part of it, not worry about the ground transportation, about getting it there. So, unless the airline says, we're only going to accept these boxes because it makes our jet pallet work better, that's really becomes the challenge. We've instituted a box charge to try and get people to say, okay, if I'm going to charge you $1 for every box on top of our cube rate, maybe they'll go to different size boxes. Hasn't made an effect. So our rate, even though a lot of people say it's high, it's minimal compared to the air freight rate, and that's what drives the sizes.
Thank you.
There is actually, just to add to that, there is a company that we're working with to bring all just one standard box size to a pallet, so we can maximize the pallets on one box size and for trucking as well.
There you go. We got a little shimmy from David, so that's awesome.
Well, and it sounds easy, Simon. I'm just not sure. I've been around the industry, and David has too, for a long time, and we've been pushing this forever. So one of the things I will state from an industry perspective, I mean, David's talking about from his perspective, is one of our challenges is the many box sizes. The second challenge is that, on a day ahead or even earlier in the day, David has no idea how many boxes are going to show up at his dock. So flower industry is very different. We deliver to truck lines instead of truck lines picking up from us. So on a daily basis, all of the truck lines don't have any idea really how many boxes are going to show up until they all get there, or until the EDI gets there. So they don't really know ahead of time. The day ahead, they have no idea how many are going to come the next day. So it becomes a very big challenge. Don't have any idea what box sizes, how many are coming in each truck. There's no idea. So trying to compare us to fruits and vegetables, which have standard boxes, and they go and pick up, is very, very different. So one of the things that I will say is education, as we talked about in the beginning, Megan, is extremely important. if it was the importers pay for the product from the country of origin to Miami, but from Miami to the rest of the country, the wholesalers or the retailers pay for that. And especially since we're talking about the traditional side determines what LTL truck line they want to use. It's really important for the customer to understand what the logistics and the facilities are that they're having their products delivered to. Because again, to Megan, to your point, cold chain logistics is what we're all about. We can grow the greatest product in the country of origin. We can have the best airline provided here. We can have the best importers selling it. But if it goes on the worst truck line out of Miami, it doesn't do anything for all the stuff that we've done.
Yeah.
So education of knowing who you're using, the facilities that the importers are delivering to, and how they handle your product out of Miami and to your facility is extremely important for that entire cold chain logistics. You know, if it was up to the importers, which we don't have any say in it, we would only have a handful of truck lines. But we have 25, 30 truck lines that haul flowers out of Miami. And so it becomes very complicated, not only to deliver to all of them, but to David's point, we all have labor and logistics issues. So if we want to have it all delivered on pallets, now we have to have twice as many trucks, twice as much labor, and we're delivering to twice as many or 4 times as many places. So education of who you're having your product delivered to and how it's leaving Miami is extremely just as important as the box sizes and how many stems are in those boxes.
David, to Christine's point, don't you have a system where we have to book in advance if we're delivering to you a day in advance or in advance the amount of pieces and the sizes? I thought
yes, they do, but so in a given day today, Thursday, you have to send your data to us by 1 o'clock today of what you're shipping today, and the boxes have to be to me by 2 o'clock. So I don't really get much advance notice. Now, luckily in our case, our customers are very consistent. So I pretty much know every Thursday that customer is going to order that many boxes. So I know approximately what's coming, but they could have an ad special. They could be doing something, something for a grocery store that you don't know about. And all of a sudden you end up with, somebody who normally buys, 100 boxes, all of a sudden gives you 700 boxes today. You don't know.
Now, is that data something that the customs broker has access to, Sharon, before it lands in Miami?
We do. When we do the entry, we know what's coming in. But as Christine will probably tell you, they might be going to different places. So what she delivers is different than what we clear. Yeah.
Because coming into the United States is one thing, but shipping to Chicago versus New York are two completely different separate.
They split it up, so you don't.
What they'll do is they'll bring in a large consignment, let's say 500 boxes. And that 500 boxes will be then sold. Some of it might be pre-sold, but some of it will be sold ex-Miami. So there might be 50 boxes going here, 3 boxes going there, 10 boxes going there. And that's not known at the point of entry sometimes. Where we actually, Solent does distribution also in Miami. We deliver to all the truck lines, but most of the stuff that we have coming in a consolidation is pre-sold. So we actually do know in advance where it's going. And
then our fresh facility in our fresh warehouse, we do the 1-800 flowers, and each one of those boxes goes somewhere else. So they have to consolidate them to what city it's going, and then it has to be delivered after that. It gets quite complicated when it comes to flowers.
Right. One of the biggest difference between flowers and other things is, to David and Simon's point earlier, and even to Sharon, you can have a whole pallet of asparagus, a whole pallet of peaches, or a whole pallet of apples, and every single box is the same. On a pallet of flowers, every single box potentially can be different. So that makes it very challenging.
And then you add in the direct-to-consumer aspect, like that case that Sharon just brought up. That's a whole nother level of complication, right? Because now you're shipping with couriers and trying to still route and organize things in a way that makes sense from an operational standpoint, and it still gets to where it needs to go.
And a cost standpoint too.
Exactly. So the overall cost of flowers, have we seen prices fluctuate that much, even though we're dealing with so many challenges?
Yeah, the prices in Miami are definitely much stronger than they've been for years. And obviously that translates all the way through to the wholesaler, to the consumer. So the retailers, having to charge a lot more for that flower than they were pre-pandemic.
Yeah, the hard part is, we have basically three sides to our industry. We have the traditional side, importer, wholesaler, retail florist, and then we have the supermarket and mass market side, and then we have direct to consumer. So, I mean, the traditional side is really based more on a commodity basis. It's, the prices fluctuate every day up and down depending upon what the market demand is. The supermarket side, a lot of those contracts are done a year in advance. And so there's not a lot of flexibility on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis to increase those prices. So a lot of times the majority of the stems that are going to those areas can't renegotiate or can't increase their prices until the renegotiation is up. And then on the direct to consumer side, they can fluctuate their prices a little bit easier also than the supermarket side. So
Sure.
it is a challenge because our industry is not set across the border. I mean across the industry. If you go into a supermarket, I always use this as an example. If you go in a supermarket, one day you might pay 69 cents for a pepper. The next day it might be $1.49. The next week it might be 89 cents. The supermarkets fluctuate a lot of their other products based on what their costs are for that that time when they're putting it out there. But we
Sure.
don't have, in the flower industry, you don't see flowers in the supermarkets fluctuating significantly. They're pretty standard across the board because of the way it's negotiated.
Yeah, but that's
So-
there's a lot of volatility in the price to get it to market, but there's not much volatility in the final sales market for supermarkets. Whereas in retail, regular retail stores, there is. I mean, you've got the difference of the volatility of price there. So
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
to give an example, I mean, normally out of Ecuador, you're on a price range right now between $1.30 to $1.50 a kilo. You went up to Mother's Day or Valentine's. Some people paying at $4, $5 a kilo. Same out of Colombia. You're $1.10, $1.20 a kilo on a bad day. Now you're up to $3.50, $3.75, $4 a kilo. So you have volatility in price of the component price of a stem of flowers, which is the growing price, the transport price, the handling costs. There are many components which go into the cost of a flower, which are extremely volatile right now. And it's very difficult for us to look at labor costs and fuel costs and put that into a cost of either a per kilo or a per stem price. And that's where I think there's a lot of issues where people are having problems with sticker shock, and that's what the issue is right now. A lot of sticker shock to a lot of importers or retailers, and then to the final consumer.
Right.
Megan,
I
I think one of the things that probably everyone should know going on right now even is that, we just got done Mother's Day and it was crazy. There was charters, as Simon said. I mean, I know of a bunch of charters that went at $5.25 a kilo, crazy prices, but the product got moved because product was in such demand that there wasn't a lot of inventory in Miami. So as the product got picked from the farm, got on a plane, they got chartered, got up here and got right on a truck and moved out. Well, the problem now is that it's just as bad to move freight, if not worse, coming out of Ecuador and Bogota right now. It's a challenge. There's products sitting in Colombia and Ecuador right now in coolers that there's no airspace because nobody wants to really pay that charter rate of $5 a kilo. So they're trying to move it on the traditional LTL, and a lot of the airlines have cut back in their service because they're doing C checks, which means the plane has to go in for a full check once a year or a D checks. So there's a huge backlog right now of trying to get product up here. So, the traditional retailers out there screaming, where's the product? And the wholesaler can't get it because it's waiting, it's having trouble getting to Miami. It's getting there, but it's not. You would think that Mother's Day's over and things would go back to somewhat of normal, but it's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah,
I've also noticed that a few airlines are using, passenger airlines especially, are using smaller planes now on some of those routes to South America, to and from. So that also limits some of our capacity. I know we're coming up on our time frame, so I want to jump into one final question for you all. And the way I think that I want to word it is understanding that there are so many opportunities to improve some of our challenges, and we have so many needs and so many issues. One of those being kind of that streamlined communication, that education for knowing who all is part of our supply chain. But if you had to say the one thing that you think from your perspective would have the greatest impact on the industry or on your particular business at this point for the industry, what do you think it would be? Christine, you want to start?
I think if I had my members right here with me, the first thing they would say is scheduled cargo flights, which would be great because cargo flights are not always necessarily scheduled. So it makes a big issue. And to David's point, sometimes then if you take planes out of service, it adds even a different situation. But having scheduled cargo flights would give us an opportunity to kind of have everything in line. Then customs would know what inspectors they need. Then the airlines would know when the flights are going to land. They would have enough staff. I mean, all the way along the line, we would know, and the importers would know. It's just a challenge, when the flights come in at different times and then the inspections take different times and the airlines are ready at different times. It provides or creates a lot of situations where we are slammed by both sides. We have delivery times from the truck line, and if the airline is late and the airlines don't have enough employees and CBP takes longer to do the inspection, there's such a limited window in order to get that product out of Miami. So it creates logistical challenges.
Awesome. Sharon.
Okay. On the seaside, over the last 20 years, more and more fruits and vegetables come via ocean. The technology has become terrific. The shelf life is longer. I think flowers are not there yet. From when I started, I think there's been a change, probably 80%. We went from air to ocean. When I first started, everything came in air. And I think with the delays that we're having at the port now, you can't possibly change that for flowers, even if you can come in, overcome the inspection, because you cannot have flowers sitting at a port for a week or a week and a half and not be able to take it out. And I think if that could be addressed and you can move more ocean and the port situation corrects itself, which hopefully it probably will soon, then you can look at bringing in more flowers via ocean. And I think that's great for the industry because it has been great for fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, there's a technology and a logistical aspect there that we have to kind of look at. Simon, what about from your perspective?
Well, to go back to Christine's point, I mean, all airlines have run on schedules. They're supposed to. They do run delays, and unfortunately, just because of the pandemic, with shortages of staff and delays, and that compounds a problem and it snowballs. So a half an hour delay at the beginning adds to a 5-hour delay at the end, and then we have double charges, right? So I think that moving forward, importers have to really be used to the fact now that we're in a new world and there's no pre-pandemic pricing. Everybody's waiting to get back to pre-pandemic pricing. Labor costs are up in Miami, double from what we see from what they were 3 years ago. If you can get some decent labor, fuel costs are up. Charter prices are up. When we're flying a plane from China to Chicago, $1 million, and as I said earlier, I'm not coming down to Ecuador for $200,000 or $300,000 when we're making, when the airlines are banking $1 million a day. So the new reality is that we need to be used to more challenges for our logistics going forward. Higher prices are here to stay.
That's a good one. What about you, David?
Well, you asked the one thing that would make the biggest change, and I'll circle back, and most people will laugh, but it's box size. It would have a dramatic impact on the entire industry if we had one size. You look at, for an example, Queen's Flowers and the Queen's Group. They have one box size. Why did they do that? Because logistically, it made the most sense for them. They gained the best air freight rates with the airlines, and their coolers are so much more efficient because they have one box size. And if our industry was able to do that, It would drive down our cost. It would drive down the airline's cost. So yes, it may increase X amount of cost for maybe that grower because it's going to cost them an extra 10 cents or 20 cents or $1 to ship that box. But in the long run, it'll be less because everything else would go down. So it would have a huge impact.
Well, David, let me clarify. They don't have one box size. They have one box size for each size.
But it all fits in a standard. It's either the quarter is the same as the half. It's the same as the full.
Well, I understand. I just want to make sure it's clarified that they don't sell in just one box size. They sell one size in each size. So one full, one half, one quarter, 1/8, 1/3. Yeah.
But they all add up to the same, which is awesome.
Yeah. I was actually expecting you, David, to say driver. So I love this answer, and I love the standardized box size because I think it takes a lot more brain power to really kind of come up with that, so it can keep, as to Simon's point, we are where we are, and we can only move forward from here. There's no going back to where we were. And so having tools at our disposition like standardized boxes, that would make a huge difference for the drivers that we do have, and allow us to attract more drivers moving forward.
Yeah, because drivers are always going to be a challenge. That industry is, you're not going to see, I've been complaining about a driver shortage for 20 years, and it's only gotten worse, and it's only going to get worse. It's a tough job. So most people don't want to do it. So we have to figure out different ways to make it work.
You guys are the warriors.
And correct me if I'm wrong,
we have
David.
Questions?
Yeah, we do. But correct me if I'm wrong, David, in our industry, it's even more difficult because of having to unload and do different things like that, correct?
Absolutely. So the second part of that for me was going to be to have all of our customers meet us and unload the truck.
Magic wand.
Which is happening at certain places. If we get to a customer that has a bad facility, we're requiring them to meet us and do the unloading. And that 5 years from now, we're probably going to have to require that for all of our drops. That's just what's going to happen in order to have drivers.
Great. So let's take a couple of questions. My partner, David Kaplan from Above All Flowers, has a question here. The days are continuing and have been worse after Mother's Day. What we hear from the panel is that space is lacking to meet demand and prices are high. How long do we think this will continue? Do you want to take that, Simon? I think you had a comment.
You're seeing right now, as I said, Asia, US is where the big dollars are, and anybody with a big aircraft is going to be flying those routes. You're going to see this well into disruption like this, well into, I believe, the middle of January 23.
January 23. Wow. Great. And then we have Above All Flowers. Here we have another question or just a comment. Near Massachusetts, Rhode Island, border diesel is between 610 to 642. So that's pretty high.
That's Massachusetts, Rhode Island border, you said.
Yeah.
Yes. So between 610 and 642. And then Kristen is saying you are funny, Saeed, because I asked David about the magic wand. And then David, again, we hear some cargo airlines have some of their planes in maintenance, so that impacts capacity. We also hear baby formula weapons for Ukraine taking planes from Flowers. How true is this?
Okay, so if I can answer that again. So yes, President Biden enacted an act yesterday. He's using some of the aircraft that have been taken, the flying Asia-US routes to fly baby formula. Atlas, Kalita are flying, let's say, goods over to Poland that to be used in Ukraine. That's under the CRAF Act, which is a government act. So therefore, yes, you're seeing capacity come out the market, but the market from Asia to US has slowed down somewhat. It's not impacting so much South America, it's impacting more Asia US. But again, if you're flying Asia US for $1 million, $1.5 million, $1.8 million a flight, you're not going to fly to Ecuador or Colombia for $200,000-$300,000. It's economics, it's capitalism, as I was told by some of the operators.
And then we have Eric Fernandez that made a comment. So Atlas Air and Kalita are actively shipping weapons to Ukraine. Both airlines provide cargo lift out of South America for Flowers. So that's and then both of these airlines are part of the Silver Reserve Air Fleet. Yep. Let's see if we have another question here. When will the disadvantages of increased costs of logistics and many other expenses overpower the advantages of current exchange rates of 4,046 pesos to a dollar in Colombia? Anybody want to take that? Is that
I think that's a supplier, decision as to, when they want to stop bringing. I mean, U.S. is the major market for South American flowers. So, I mean, we've had, peso versus dollar issues in the past. I mean, David, I'm sure you and I remember both, way back when everyone cried about the peso dollar valuation. And I mean, we got past it. So it's a supplier demand issue.
Well,
Anybody else?
if the peso's high, it's great for growers when they're being paid in US dollars, right? But when they're paying for freight in US dollars, it's not so good for them. So it's a double-edged sword again.
Yeah.
Then Mauricio Glacier from Vacuum Cooling is saying most flower species can easily afford 15 plus days in modern reefers if properly prepared with the right technology.
Thank you, Mauricio.
We're going to bring him on. He has a really cool cooling system. Very interesting. Been doing it for years. Yeah, in Colombia. So very interesting. Megan?
Well, I think that is all the questions I had. Guys, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation today. And it's great to reconnect with so many of you and those of you who are watching. And I really appreciate the questions that have come in and the insights that our guests have provided today. So to really wrap up what we've seen, there's a massive lack of standardization in the industry, both with timeframes and the actual packaging of flowers, which we can learn from the vegetables and produce side. Like to Christine's point, while it's a completely different business model, standardization in certain things as far as packing would really make all of our jobs a lot easier. It helps with counting, it helps with inspections, it helps with selling, it helps with moving, and it helps with being able to prepare for travel capacity, whether it's ocean, air, or overland. Making sure that we're being as efficient as possible. I think that the people on the screen right now are some of the biggest leaders in the industry and are a wealth of knowledge with regards to making sure that we understand the issues from the ground up. Christine, you and David do that very well. Sharon, you're very involved with advocacy. And Simon, I know you deal with a lot with your customers as far as understanding what their actual needs are. And that's the beauty of chartering. And so being able to understand what they need and then making sure that we find the solutions to be able to meet some of those needs will help us build stronger businesses and continue to thrive post-pandemic and post-war, post everything that's happening right now, and understanding where we can go from here. So Saeed, thank you so much for having us today. It's been a pleasure, as always, to chat with you guys. I think flower industry is one of the most fascinating and intricate industries that exist. And so it's always a pleasure to discuss and dive into some of the fun topics. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so very much for having us.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
Thanks.
That's interesting. So,
Thank you,
thank you all. Thank you all so much. Red Kennecott, I got a link and he's here, so I feel like letting him in, but what's going to happen? But let me see if I let him in. Maybe he has a comment. That's just pretty cool. This is a very authentic show. Things happen. And Red Kennecott kind of just jumped in, so I'm going to let him in real quick and see if he had a comment. I know this is off the cuff. It wasn't prepared, so we're letting him in really quickly. And he highly respected. Hi, Red.
Hi, Red.
Hi,
how are you?
Thank you very much. I had the time mixed up, so it looks like I'm joining the show at the end, so I apologize.
Yeah. So did you have a comment before we ended?
No, I don't, but thank you.
All right. But nice seeing you. And
Good to see all of you, and great to be with you. And sorry I missed your presentation.
No, you're a gentleman. It will be recorded on YouTube. We truly appreciate you. I'm going to put you back in the Bloom Room, we call it. But it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Red.
Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody, truly thank you to everybody, excuse me, for joining. Christine, David, wealth of information. Simon, thank you so much. And Sharon, thank you so much. We know that there was different industries and different perspectives, and it really means a lot to just come together and share either unified message or different perspectives. It just allows everybody involved to understand a little bit more clear and make better decisions. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Megan, for your time, and thank you truly for joining us today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, guys.
We're going to put you in the green room, in the Bloom Room. Take care. So again, thank you to everybody for joining. It's truly meaningful to come out and share a unified message and having different perspectives with industry leaders that have dedicated, excuse me, and shown passion to the flower industry. And that's something you could see throughout everybody and all their communication is the passion that they share. So thank you again for everybody that joined us today. Thank you for the guests. We have one last question here. Above all flowers, and crazy, he said. So I'll move that. But again, thank you to everybody for joining. It was truly rewarding for me to watch it, and hopefully we can do a bigger step in sharing this video and sharing this link with your customers so that they could get the messaging, not just from you that, oh, the product wasn't coming today or what have you. They could get a clear understanding of why prices are going up, why logistics is becoming more and more difficult every day, and what we expect for the future of logistics. So again, thank you to everybody that joined. I do want to mention that June 16th, we're having Arnold Whitcamp from Thurs, a great collaborator to our company, a great innovator as well, a great blogger, and another source of information and news channel. So please do join us on June 16th. And again, thank you to all the guests for joining. Thank you to all the viewers. And don't forget to subscribe, like, or comment, or press the little alert key there so you never miss an episode. Take care.